I'm sorry. I'm sorry to my friends in Taiwan. The Australian government cannot recognize your sovereignty as a nation, even though you're a de facto independent country, even though when Taiwanese travelers visit Beijing, they go through foreign customs, even though everybody knows Taiwan actually exists as a de facto independent state, the Australian government cannot recognize you because you didn't go out on one single day and carry out the worst terrorist attack of the past 10 years and slaughter thousands of people and go house to house, shooting dogs in the fucking head and shooting innocent family members and beheading people while screaming Allahu Akbar and shooting up hundreds of people attending a music festival. Unfortunately, Taiwan didn't do that, so they can't get statehood. They can't get recognition by the Australian government. I think that's a sad lesson. I'm somebody who's always supported a two-state solution. I actually do support Palestinian statehood. But to do it when Hamas has not even disarmed, before Hamas even hands back the last remaining hostages is just crazy. It's just crazy because it's literally a reward for October 7. Like, I could understand Australia recognizing Palestine the second Hamas disarms, the second the last hostages are returned. But how the hell can you recognize it while Hamas is still fighting this insane jihad total war and still inflicting so much suffering on their own people in Gaza? The Australian government says, oh, we're not rewarding Hamas. But the truth of the matter is there would not be Palestinian statehood recognition by Australia if October 7 did not happen. So unfortunately, there is a reward in a way. And I just think that's sad. Last week, literally days ago, Hamas forced one of the remaining hostages, who is now just skin and bones. You can see footage, you can watch footage. Hamas fighters who are healthy, who are not starving at all, they still look normal. Hamas fighters are sitting next to this guy who is just skin and bones. He looks like a concentration camp survivor, and they force him to dig his own grave on camera. And days later, the Australian government says, let's recognize Palestinian statehood. I support Palestinian statehood, but do it at the end of the war. Do it when Hamas is defeated and disarmed and when the hostages are returned. You can't do it in the middle of a war because that rewards October 7th. That's crazy, okay? I think it's sad for the future of Australia. Because listen, this is unfortunately reality here. Large sections of the Muslim community in Australia openly celebrate October 7th. People were letting off fireworks in Western Sydney to celebrate the massacres. Jewish schools and synagogues were firebombed. This was a wave of terror that's been going on for 2 years now. And in the end, after this reign of terror against minorities in Australia, after Islamic extremists take to the street every single week and seize control of the center of our cities, the Australian government recognizes Palestine. And the lesson is this: massacre people, torture, rape, take hostages, starve them, execute minorities, terrorize Australians inside Australia. Then the weak West will capitulate to you and give you everything. And I think that's wrong. I think that's crazy, okay? I think that's crazy. Again, I actually support a two-state solution, but you can't do it while Hamas is still in control of Gaza. That is crazy. That is a reward for the worst terrorist attack of the past 10 years. Why is it that the Tibetans don't get recognized? Why is it that the Taiwanese don't get recognized? And unfortunately, the lesson that they teach is you're not massacring enough people. You're not slaughtering enough people. You're not carrying out terrorist attacks. That's wrong. That's wrong. I'm against terrorist attacks. I don't want the Tibetans or the Taiwanese to take a violent road. I don't want that. The reality is, sadly, the world is teaching people all around the world that they only listen to force. They only listen to people who can take power by the barrel of a gun, as Mao would say. And that's wrong. I think that's wrong. I would support a world that's peaceful. Unfortunately, the world powers reward violence and reward extremism and terrorism. And I think that's horrible. Right now, you have literally a de facto independent state in Taiwan. If a Taiwanese traveler goes to Beijing by plane, they go through foreign customs. Everybody knows it's an independent state. It already exists. And the Australian government will never recognize it in a million years because the Taiwanese community in Australia just don't go and firebomb daycares. And what I love about it as well is you go to all the worst leaders of the Islamist extremist movement in Australia, and none of them are happy that the Australian government recognized Palestine. They're all saying it's not enough. It's not enough. Australia shouldn't exist and Israel shouldn't exist. And so these people will never be pacified. These people will never be appeased. That's the problem. You think the weekly Islamist extremist show of forced rallies are going to stop? Of course not. They're still going to march every weekend. They're still going to try to take over the centers of our cities. And that's what happens, unfortunately, when you're weak. As I said, I support two-state solution. I support Palestinian statehood. But you do it at the end of the war when Hamas is defeated, when hostages are returned. You don't do it in the middle of the war because then Hamas learn a lesson that October 7 for them was worth it. And that's sick. That's wrong.